Well, new research suggests that the medical cannabis market, I should say, in Asia could eclipse over $8 billion in the next 5 years if it's legalised across the region.
Medicinal cannabis is now legal in 33 US states and a number of countries, including Germany, Italy and the Netherlands. So how can Australia benefit from this boom? Mark Bernberg is founder of the Green Fund and joins us now. Firstly, Mark, just to talk about our part of the world, what's the kind of potential in terms of the market, the size and scope of it?
So to give you an idea of how big this could be, they estimate that last year the Australian cannabis industry, medicinal, was worth about $18 million. And this is predicted to grow to around about $3 billion in 9 years' time.
That's a lot of money.
It's a big market. And a lot of the big players, especially from North America, have already taken a vested interest in Australia. They see it as a great opportunity.
Some people at home might think of medical cannabis and think of a sick person, toking on a joint or something like that. Can you give us a bit of an update as to where the science is right now and what's being taken out of the plant and putting into sick people to help them?
Sure. So that is, one of the form factors that you can use when it comes to cannabis. But the trend these days is to move away from flower or smoking and to move towards edibles and extracts. And one of the reasons for that is that they've been able, through synthetic and biosynthetic cannabis, to be able to isolate some of the key compounds, take out the THC, the compound that gets you high, and really focus on the CBD to deliver the best opportunity for treating whatever ailment it might be.
And with the ageing population in certain parts of Asia, that's obviously quite a potential attraction, right?
It's a big attraction. So if you look at one of the biggest states in the US, Florida is still only medicinally legal, no recreational. They have one of the highest percentages of aged populations, especially the retirees going down there, which has by itself made it one of the most valuable medicinal markets, because a lot of the medicinal treatment now is for inflammation, pain, anxiety. So a huge trend now amongst the older population to actually, get on board with medicinal cannabis.
And Mark, what's the opportunity for Australia in all this? Are we growing a lot? Are we doing a lot in this space? Is there an opportunity to do much more?
It's interesting. There are a few companies in Australia that are focusing on cultivation and growing, so the Can Group would be one of those. But then there's some really interesting stuff happening in Australia around the research of using synthetic cannabinoids, so actually not growing the plant itself, but cultivating it in a lab, isolating the key compounds, and then treating diseases, such as acne. If you look at Botanics Pharma, they're going after the acne market, which is huge. Wow. You look at some of the other companies that are on the ASX, and I think Australia could well position itself as being a leader in the medicinal market, particularly if you think about bringing cannabinoids into China. So think our milk powder and the brand and reputation that Australia has in terms of producing pharmaceutical products, and now open up one of the biggest economies in the world to wellness, which is topical creams, edibles and extracts.
That is one of them, isn't it? I mean, we talk about the medical cannabis, which goes to the very, very sick people, but then there's also this kind of supplements and wellness space, a lot being done with hemp. And then separate from that again, you've got the actual material that comes from hemp. So what are the big focuses, and are they kind of secondary areas of focus as well?
So when it comes to medicinal cannabis, you get your pharmaceutical grade, which is obviously prescription type, pioneered by companies like GW Pharma in the US. But then you get the sort of nutraceutical, your wellness products that can be sold over the counter. So just recently, CVS and Walgreens, huge chains are starting to now stock some of the wellness products. So I think a huge opportunity is going to be in hemp-derived CBD, and I think Australia has great climatic conditions in order to grow hemp in large scale. And then it's the gateway to Asia in terms of putting Australian-made, again, think Blackmore's Australian-made wellness products into the biggest market on the planet.
Although, as we've kind of set up already, all of this involves legalisation. And from what I understand, legislation in China makes no distinction between medicinal or medical and recreational cannabis, and therefore, and people are saying pretty much that looks very unlikely to change. Hong Kong the same. So this huge market of potential, basically the doors are closed, no?
They're closed at the moment, but they are definitely opening. So China, a lot of people don't realise this, China produces at the moment almost half the world's hemp. And at the same time, there are 600 registered patents across cannabis. China holds 300 of those. and that includes different types and forms of, form factors and consumption of cannabis. There is a huge movement now to start to have the conversations around medicinal cannabis, and China's actually opened its door to Canadian, US, and Israeli companies to actually perform medicinal research in the country. So, the ball is slowly starting to roll.
You can't see them moving very quickly from a legalising point of view, though, surely.
When you've got countries like Thailand that have gone medicinally legal, where it's the death penalty for drug dealing, there is a changing attitude in Asia. I agree with you. I think it's a couple of years off, but that also gives...
Some people say at least 5 to 10, to be conservative.
Maybe, even if we said...
research firms that I was reading.
Even if we said 5 years, it gives Australian companies a really good runway from now to produce, globally, leading, I suppose, wellness drugs in the CBD industry.
Yeah. Of course, you look at this all from an investment perspective. People are looking at places to put their money. So, I mean, you're from the Green Fund and you're an investment strategist. Can you tell us a bit about what goes into the Green Fund and how it works?
Sure. So, the Green Fund is essentially a publishing house that focuses, entirely on the cannabis industry, and it's designed for, 3 different types of persons. Really, your sophisticated investor who's coming along, probably invested already in the market and wants, the hard facts when it comes to the financial analysis. And then you've got what our biggest target market is, the millennials that are hearing about cannabis and pot all the time, understand some basic knowledge when it comes to shares, but are yet to invest and looking to invest. And then, of course, there's the third bucket where people who have no idea about shares, no idea about cannabis, we cater for them too by delivering educational information and trying to break the stigma that is, after 80 to 100 years of propaganda is pretty well entrenched with people.
It's interesting though, despite all that kind of that psychology stuff that you were mentioning there, the legality, it's still an exciting place for a lot of people. Those unsophisticated investors seem very interested. Sometimes we talk to Matt Leibowitz from Stake, who says that over in the US, Australians investing in the US market, very, very interested in the cannabis space. So with all that excitement going on, is it very difficult to pick a quality producer, a quality company from maybe one that's not as flash? And how does kind of information and education come into that question?
Sure. So, what we always advise people when it comes to investing in cannabis is understand the macro play first. What is what is medicinal cannabis? What is recreational cannabis? And where is it applicable? And then have a look at key components of the industry. So you get the cultivators, the growers, then you get the manufacturers turning it into oils. And then you get, of course, the retailers, who are selling it either medicinally or recreationally. Once you understand the sectors, then use the Green Fund to identify key companies in those sectors, read about them in an easy to understand way, and then sort of take a position and say, we feel this is a good play. We try and cover the more reputable companies that we believe have a good future in this, as opposed to sort of every company, because there's a lot of dodgy stuff out there, that's for sure.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Easy to spot?
Pretty easy to spot. It's companies that are talking about what they're going to do and talking about it and not really doing a lot about it. And, everybody unfortunately thinks if they've got a piece of land and they can put up a cannabis growing house, they're going to be a millionaire. It's not really going to work like that, particularly with it being cultivated now in labs and stuff. So it's trying to identify the companies that what they say they do and are starting to execute, as opposed to those that, it's all sort of in the future.
Mark Bernberg, founder of the Green Fund, thank you so much. As we've experienced with your money, certainly a topic so many people are interested in. Anytime
Thanks for having me, guys.
The phones light up, etc. Thank you so much, Mark Bernberg, the Green Fund.